And that's kind of where I struggle today, even because I think where food tourism has evolved and this concept is now quite known, we could argue that it's become quite commoditized. I struggle with the idea of like how much of this quote unquote authentic experience is a performance, and where is that a good thing, actually, because it means that there's been a lot of thought, a lot of energy put into the design. There's been a staging that creates this experience that we want to have. So I don't consider the performance element to be a bad thing. But then on the other hand, when do you kind of over perfect it into an experience that is just in the end of the day, a repeatable show that goes off the exact same time every time and doesn't allow for those moments of kind of friction or variation that often are what build those core memories.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tourpreneur Travel Business Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Bach, and I am really excited that I am finally able to align schedules to meet with somebody who I've admired in this industry for a long, long time, Lauren Aloise, who is the co-founder of Devour Tours. And today she has a big fancy title at a big fancy company, but she, to me, will always be the co-founder of Devour Tours. Lauren, welcome to Tourpreneur. What's your title today?
Thank you, Mitch. Great to be here. And well, technically, I am the VP of Marketing and Guest Experience for Walks and Devour Tours.
Well, I am glad I didn't try to get that correct because that's a lot. I think we'll probably end up at that title at the end of the show. But the reason I really wanted to bring you on is because we've gotten to know each other over the pandemic at some Arrival conferences. You've gone to the Tourpreneur conferences. You've done some business coaching for us. And every time that I hear you speak, it's with that kind of knowledge that comes from having done it, but also a really beautiful knowledge that shows a passion for what you do, which is food tourism. And so I just want to say that I've really appreciated your insights and the way that you've shared it so vulnerably and honestly and insightfully and passionately with the Tourpreneur community. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very nice to hear.
So Devour Tours, where did it begin? Why? How? Give me the rundown.
Sure. I'll try to do it in the brief version. So I was living in Spain for about 2 years, had just moved to Madrid, and my background and passion was always in hospitality and tourism. It's what I studied in college. It's what I always worked in as a teenager and then a young adult. And I specifically loved food. I first came to Spain to learn a little bit more about Spanish cuisine, seeing how it was becoming so popular in the US at the time, and thought, okay, if I'm not going to go to France, maybe a more typical destination for someone interested in culinary and hospitality and tourism, I'll go to Spain, but ended up staying. So therefore, it was 2011 when I moved to Madrid and thought like, okay, I want to start a career. I want to start my life. What can I do? And so I tried a lot of different things. I gave cooking classes out of my home before that was a thing, and there were no platforms for this. It was just like Facebook messages and people would come. I did a lot of writing about food and Spanish culture, and that was fun and starting to have some traction, but it was also very isolating. You're behind a screen literally all day, every day. And so one day, I think I saw a Google ad for a food tour I believe it was in Italy somewhere. And I remember clicking and just thinking like, wow, this is an amazing concept. You've got this like 3 to 4 hour package that really does like check all the boxes. You're meeting people who are coming from afar and you're being able to connect them to local culture through food, through good food, making sure that they go to a place that's worth going to instead of, a tourist trap. And at the same time, telling the stories and really connecting to the people, which was something that drove me to, I think, admire this concept. And so I just thought like, okay, I'm in this let's try it and see what sticks phase. Let's try a food tour in Madrid. And so I launched what that time was called madridfoodtour.com. From my basic SEO knowledge, I was like, that sounds like a good name. And luckily it was. I mean, we were in that golden age of SEO. I think I had bookings after like having the site live for a week or so with a couple of blog posts and a logo that I made, which if people who know me know that I'm not like artistically inclined. So you can imagine.
What year was this for all our Gen Z listeners?
2011. Yes, 2011. And so, yeah, I really was, it was kind of a little bit of like, yes, I had a background in certain things, but it was also a huge element of fake it till you make it and just, minimum viable product. So I came up with a few tours. I was new to the city, so I mean, if I'd gotten lost on one of those tours, I think I would have been pretty stuck. I didn't know my way around even that well, but I knew where I wanted to bring people. I knew the foods I wanted them to try. I knew the story of those foods, and I'd gotten to know the local people who were kind of the stars of those places. And so those were the humble beginnings. For the first few years, I guided. About 6 months in, I met the person who would become my co-founder. His name was James, and it was kind of a similar story. A Kiwi, married to a Spaniard. I'm American, married to a Spaniard in Madrid. Deep knowledge of and deep love for this cuisine and culture, and a passion for this kind of responsible, sustainable tourism that was kind of forming at that time. And so we guided at night. I guided during the day. It was about 2 years of that with a small team of guides. And then we thought, like, let's make this bigger. And that was really when we consciously shifted into what would become Devour. We expanded in Spain. Later, we took a leap to other European countries. And right as the pandemic was starting, we were really had kind of saved everything we'd ever earned to expand bigger. And we were about to go into a few different European destinations and also do the groundwork to expand into the US. So we had a big plan in front of us. And we're hoping to be self-funded for as long as possible. And of course, then we went into the pandemic and everything changed. But here we are, and we're still here. So I'm happy that that's the case.
When you look at the way Devour has evolved, what do you still feel like it's pretty much true to kind of what the original vision was, or does it feel like it's taken unexpected turns or evolutions? How do you look at it as a kind of single company over such a long time?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's something that I'm constantly thinking about. I'm going to break it down into a few different areas. So has Devour stayed kind of true to the soul and the essence of what that first tour was? And I would say absolutely. I think that though there have been ups and downs and learnings along the way, scaling this has never been easy, but we always knew what those core elements were to be able to scale this successfully. One of which definitely being that local ambassador for the culture, the guide, the host, whatever we want to call them. They really are a mix of the two when it comes to a Devour tour. They both have information and knowledge, but they're also very much, it's a hospitality and tourism product, not just a tourism product. So it's so important that ability to bring people together, to connect literally with the people who are serving the food, whether they're the owners or just wait staff. But there's a connection there, and there's a back and forth that we bring people in on, and end up kind of co-creating an energy in the group. Now, with scale, of course, there's times that might not happen, and that's hard. But it was something that I think my co-founder James and I, we both knew we're pretty realist mentality, I guess we both have, and we knew that as we scaled, there would be times where you wouldn't quite get there. It wouldn't quite be the tour that you'd given on those first tours. But that's okay. And I think that just makes us think about the experience as like a sum of its parts, but the parts have to be really well considered. And that's kind of where I struggle today even, because I think where food tourism has evolved and this concept is now quite known, we could argue that it's become quite commoditized. I struggle with the idea of like how much of this quote unquote authentic experience is a performance, and where is that a good thing actually, because it means that there's been a lot of thought, a lot of energy put into the design. There's been a staging that creates this experience that we want to have. So I don't consider the performance element to be a bad thing. But then on the other hand, when do you kind of over perfect it into an experience that is just in the end of the day, a repeatable show that goes off the exact same time every time and doesn't allow for those moments of kind of friction or variation that often are what build those core memories. So, I mean, I struggle with that today. I don't have the answer, but it's a question that I'm always asking.
My gosh. I mean, we could talk on this question for the next hour because it's the heart of tourism in some ways as well. That performative aspect is the commercialized aspect as well. It's repeatable. You go to this vendor because it's a bit of a performance. They know what they're doing. They're putting on that kind of hospitality show for the tour group. They're able to like figure out how to bill you correctly and work easily with you as a company. And yet in another part of town is the place that is quote unquote more local, more authentic, or better food. And so you're making choices on quality versus efficiency. You're also trying to make questions on the sort of way in which you as a tourism product engage with culture that doesn't always want to be disturbed. And in fact, you live in Spain, pretty clear that there's a movement against the idea of the disturbance of tourism itself. It's not a, I mean, I'm not going to ask you what the answer is because it's an impossible thing, except I guess you just keep the tension.
Yeah, I think keeping the tension's a good way to put it. We're always framing things within some sort of framework where you're saying, well, okay, this could have this effect, but it could also have this effect. Which one is the one that we want to have? Because I don't think, disengaging with tourism in the city centers of Barcelona or San Sebastian, areas that have had locals protest against tourism, is the answer either. So for us, it's really important that when we know that there does exist this problem, or at least this dissatisfaction among a certain group of people, like, how are we participating in this in a way that makes sense and that the pros definitely outweigh the cons? And so, yeah, we ask ourselves that a lot. Some of the kind of more practical areas that we're evaluating are always like group size, the actual partnership with the venues. Certainly, we would never want to work with a venue that doesn't want to work with us. So that's really important that they're telling us that in spite of everything going on, or some of the kind of things that you might see in the neighborhood, we are happy to have you here. You're adding value to our business. And so that's at the core of it. And just the being respectful as we go along, of course. But also, I think that there's a huge and often underlooked opportunity that our tour guides really have, to educate and inspire the group to spend money locally, which is often something that it's very hard to track that. I wish you could have a report showing how much Devour Tours has put into like local economies just based on where the tour guides recommend you go have coffee or brunch. And so, yeah, that's something that we think a lot about, but there's definitely been a shift over the 10 plus years we've been doing this. At the beginning, it was like, come, this is so cool. And now it's kind of like, wait a sec, we might not need you, or we might not want you. And we have to really be receptive to that.
You mentioned the S word, scale, and it seems to kind of just drip out of the mouths of tour operators almost automatically. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to scale my business. And it's, first of all, sometimes it seems like, oh, you just kind of keep growing and adding guides. And yet I know you've experienced decades worth of figuring out scaling. And in some ways you have achieved the Holy Grail, which there are very, very few walking tour or food tour companies that exist in dozens of locations around the world. A, why is that? And B, what are your lessons learned on the S word?
Yeah. Oh gosh, scale. Yeah. I mean, I think our mission from when we kind of pivoted into the concept of Devour instead of Madrid Food Tour was definitely like, okay, well, we're seeing that we're in our heart, we're thinking like we're filling these people's vacations and their lives with these amazing moments, and it's working and we're doing it well here. So why couldn't we do it elsewhere? As long as we're going to do it in a way that makes sense for us, I think we gave ourselves the permission to scale. And our model was also really based on having, and I think this is actually different than a lot of models out there, we have a local full-time on-staff manager when we open a new destination. So we're not kind of just from a central hub, calling some local guides and being like, do a tour, but use the Devour badge when you do it tomorrow in the Gothic Quarter. It's very much an owned and operated product line managed by someone locally or multiple people locally. And I think that makes a big difference, at least it did for me. It felt like a more sustainable way to do it. But that's hard. It's so hard. Like, even just hiring, I think anyone who hires anyone in any business knows that hiring's hard. So finding that culture fit across cultures it's hard. But we had a lot of trial and error. We made a ton of mistakes. We had people who were not a good fit for us. We were not a good fit for them. And we learned a lot through that. But at the end of the day, when you do find those great people, like, there's nothing like it, because they're the ones who you have to give them the elements of the brand and the values, of course, of what we're doing and the kind of concept. And I like to say we give a lot of boxes, but then we give space within those boxes for the people to move around. And that's when you get like this magical thing where, because I wouldn't have thought of it, I wouldn't have thought of doing a tour like this in Paris because I know nothing about Paris. But that's okay, because we have someone in Paris who knows everything. And you have this great this great way of product development, of scaling, of solving problems come out of that. And of course, as you start to, I think the first few cities can be very difficult because you're still learning and you're still realizing that what works in Spain won't work in France. And then that's different also in Portugal. But once you've kind of gotten through a few of those mountains, you start to cross-pollinate too. Like we'd never run the same food tour with two groups at the same time in Spain. We always scaled on top of one another at intervals. When we realized that was so common in Italy when we opened there, it really made us rethink everything and like, okay, well, could we, at least ask the questions. Maybe the answer is no, but we asked, could we do this at the two groups at 6 p.m. that went on a different version of the route or opposite version? Would we still be staying true to what we want to achieve with the product? And sometimes yes, sometimes no. But, that was really interesting too, to when we started to realize there were just lessons from different markets that carried across.
One of the things that I think operators often think of is, I can get a more consistent lifetime customer if I have more destinations that I can send them to. Did you find that? Did you find that you had repeat customers regularly booking Devour Tours? And a sort of side question to that is, or is it easier for a lot of our audience that are the smallest business owners just to partner with others and create kind of affiliate relationships and networks that way?
Yeah, I don't think there's an answer either way, but I will say that we do have and have always had a small group of loyal customers where even when we're only in a few cities would, book and rebook and come the next year or on their same trip say, oh, actually, I loved this in Madrid. I'm going to do it because we're going to Barcelona tomorrow. And that is a huge advantage of scale. But I wouldn't say it's not as obvious as you would think. And even though we are in, 20 destinations, Walks and Devour, we still don't have people constantly going from one to another and being like, what Walks and Devour tour do I book today? I wish that is always the goal, to increase that lifetime customer value, but it's not as easy or as obvious. And I don't think people are as loyal to a brand as we would hope that they are. And for brand loyalty to exist, you really have to be offering something special there that you have to really connect people to the brand, because otherwise people don't even remember. And, they're going to go and they're going to look, and there's kind of, no marketing funnel today. People are being inundated by messages everywhere. You might be on social and see a great reel that makes you think like, wow, that food tour looks cool. And we do have a trip to Italy coming up. Like, what's that company? Let me book that. And you forget you did a Devour last year and loved that one too, but someone else served an ad to you, or you saw an organic piece and it resonated. So I would say it's difficult to capture lifetime value. Customer acquisition is still really, really key, and it's hard.
You mentioned that you need something special. I feel like food tourism is special. It's not a walking tour. As you mentioned, it's more than tourism, it's hospitality. That's starting to get at something that I think a lot of people feel about food tourism who are in it. But from the outside, in some ways, it might just look like it's a walking tour, except that you go into a few places and you taste some things. How is there a qualitative difference in food tourism from kind of walking around and listening to a storyteller?
Yeah, no, there's definitely a difference. But I think that you've kind of hit the nail on the head with the customer doesn't necessarily know or see that or evaluate for that when they're making their decision. I think a lot of people come into a food tour with I like food. I'd like to try a lot of typical food from this place. This puts it all together, so it saves me time and maybe saves me money, possibly depending on the tour, but because we're trying 10 things in one go. I don't know that many people are thinking beyond that when they book. Certainly when they take the tour, though. That's what sticks with them. And that's what's going to make it memorable. And it really is that more qualitative side of what we offer that is where we're basically like, food is the bait and switch, right? It's like, no, we're not really switching because we still got the food, but we're trying to hook people in with this idea of this comprehensive food day. But at the end of the day, when they come, we're hoping to really give them an experience that evokes emotion and has almost like in an ideal world, a transformative element to it. People have left our tours, and I think some of the things that you just see especially when you're guiding, which is, I think it's such a gift to have spent those years guiding, because it teaches you and really shows you so much, and it gives you you're with your customer day in and day out and seeing their face light up for one thing or fall for another. But what I noticed is really there's people from all over the world who take these trips, right? Especially we have a lot of American clients coming to Europe, and a lot of times that is the time of their year, or their every 2 years or 3 years, where they meet people from a variety of places. Like their lives back home might be a little bit more insulated, and their echo chambers or circles a little bit more closed off. So these tours are an opportunity for people to just kind of change their perspective for 3 or 4 hours. They'll get the guide's perspective, they'll get the local vendors' perspectives, and they'll get their other guests' perspectives. And if people come on with an openness and a curiosity, which is our ideal customer, doesn't always happen, but it usually happens, it's just like the kind of feelings that they have. I know that sounds very imprecise, but you just see it. You see the feelings that they have throughout the tour, and just like the kind of awe with some of the things, or the surprise, or the discomfort when they might be standing crowded in a tapas bar. That might not be enjoyable, but at the end of the day, they felt like, wow, we did that. Like we went in like the locals. We wouldn't have maybe done it by ourselves because we would have been intimidated. And so, yeah, those qualitative things, it's just so hard to get across. I think video helps nowadays, where video is obviously a huge part of anyone's marketing strategy. But yeah, it's like you want to be like, we're going to change your life with this food tour. And people would be like, what are you talking about? Like, that does not sound right. But maybe we will.
On another hand, though, the storytelling around food has like really evolved. It used to be kind of cooking shows, and now it is Anthony Bourdain. It is, who's always the kind of guest of reference. But I think there's something also in the zeitgeist around some of these. I think of like Chef's Table, for example, on Netflix, following on a chef, and it opened my eyes. Or was it High on the Hog?
Haven't seen
Which
that one.
was about I'm just naming my Netflix queue. It was also a book, and it was about the foodways of how food travels how food traveled from the nations in Africa from which the enslaved were pulled and dragged onto boats and brought over to Charleston, South Carolina, and New Orleans, and these places in the South, and then like how it evolved and moved up north. And so it's storytelling of global geopolitics and American history through food. I've been on food tours where I get a lot of information about the food and about the chef or whatever. And then I've been on food tours that understand that the food is doing a lot more work in terms of what the experience is than just information about what I'm eating.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I don't know. I won't say that there's a wrong model. I think maybe both have their place, but it's, again, from a consumer side, I don't know that you definitely see that difference. I guess that's, again, in the more intangible parts of what you're portraying with your brand. What we're always trying to portray with Devour is that deeper connection and that depth of story. That was very important from the beginning for us. It was just, I think both James and I came from this semi-journalism background. He was also writing about food for a bunch of different newspapers at the time when we met. And so it was really like, yeah, how do we use this as just a catalyst for conversation and for history? And one of our best-selling products from day one, really, and still to this day, is one of our tours that we run in a couple cities called Tapas, Taverns, and History. And I think when I see the guests who come on that tour, they're there because it's like, I wanted to take a food tour. That sounded fun. But this one spoke to me because I also want to learn a lot. I want to learn. I want to understand the history. But like, I don't want to do that in a boring way. And I think there's still, a preconception of walking tours that they can be quite dry and boring. And that's a whole other conversation. And some are and some aren't. But like the food tour, just, I guess, maybe it's even just a safety thing. It's like, well, even if it is boring, at least we've got wine and ham, like what could go wrong with that? But yeah, I mean, people who come on that, they're eager for the information. And so it's just, yeah, it's wonderful. It's the educational aspect of the tours.
I've taken that tour in Madrid. It was wonderful, of course. And what I loved, though, is, I mean, tapas, they are by default a shared social thing. Like, I don't hoard my 19 little sardines on toast, right? We're all communing around a shared table. And then what is a taverna but that, just connection? It's a connection hotspot. And so I think, to the food tourism individuals out there, use the richness of what these spaces are for and don't just turn them into a product that you tell, you eat. It's like you should, I always think that a food tour guide should be thinking as much about the icebreakers and seating charts and who's sitting with whom and how are we gathering as like making sure the order is ready and making sure you pay. Of course, that logistics is important, but how you've gathered and presented that shared table is magical because there are so many food tour moments that just become something magical because of the guests talking to each other and you like get out of the way.
Yeah. I think that's hard for some guides too, but it's especially ones who come in it from more of a professional, I'm a tour guide perspective, it can feel uncomfortable. And whereas the people who we brought on who were not guides and came in it very much through our training and our modeling, maybe were a little bit more easier in that way. But we were always looking for people who had that, what I call that host element, right? That hospitality element, because what you're saying is so true. The magical tours, especially the evening ones where there's often some alcohol involved and you're just like, it's like you're out with this group of friends, but you just met and you're all really different. You're from different places. You have different beliefs. It's, it's almost scary walking into it because you're like, oh gosh, what's going to happen? But by the end, on 9.9 times out of 10, you're just like, wow, that you're on a high from the human connection. Because I honestly think we're all a bit starved for that face-to-face human connection, especially once you get to be a certain age. Your social groups don't tend to expand. So this is a very rare opportunity for you to just, when else in the year are you going to be with all of 10 other people or these 8 other people from different places, different belief systems, and yet you're sharing a very rich and new and fun experience with a hospitable local person. It's just got like a lot of makings of success, but I've also seen that exact group come together at the beginning of the night, and when that host isn't doing their job, maybe they don't know it's their job, but when they're not hosting and they're not facilitating conversation, they're not letting them talk for a bit. They're not kind of thinking like, oh, this person hasn't really been in, let's put them there. When they're not doing that, but seamlessly doing it, it's very noticeable and it's not enjoyable. And it's what I would consider to be a failure.
It changes what you think the tour is about and also how you train your guides to achieve what you're looking for. Because we all say we want connection, of course, but creating connection is work and it's a different
Yes.
kind of guide work than, oh my gosh, this is going to get me in trouble, but the licensed official guide of X European city that thinks they have a birthright to own the idea of talking in public in every form possible. And I understand the hard work that they go through. I went through it in Paris. I've been there. I am one. And yet it's like after 3 years of learning every possible fact, you think your job is to cram all of those facts into 3 hours. For people who are inundated and overwhelmed and just want to get to know each other a little bit more and have a little bit more of a relaxed sense of experience of the place that's based on the place and not on your mouth.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the applications to more traditional tour guiding of the same conversation, it's profound just because it's not necessarily a food and drink experience that more naturally lends itself to hospitality. I would consider, again, I am a believer that these two are really interconnected and you can't really have tourism without hospitality, but a lot of times we don't talk about it as a hospitality product. And so for licensed tour guides, I understand what you're saying. And I've been there on certain tours where it's just, a walking encyclopedia. I do think that for those types of tours, AI is going to be a big
Wake up call.
change maker. Yeah. So then if you start to go through the exercise of like, well, what is going to happen? The conversations around what's AI going to do to tour guides and tours and activities, and will it take away our jobs? I personally don't believe it will, but I do think it will make us all think a little bit harder about, well, what are the pieces of this tour that we can't get from my chat GPT beautiful voice that answers me and answers all my questions. And I can do a little like, hey, what tell me about this painting? And like, great. Oh, actually, I'm interested in this little detail. Like, it's incredible what you can do. So unless you're getting something that provides something more, which again is that hospitality element more than the tourism part, I think we could be in some trouble. But I believe that hospitality is what people want more than anything right now. We see that in different verticals in the sector. So Not
And maybe
worry.
even more, it's just like when we just started to learn how to gather as humans again after COVID, now comes AI, another thing to rip us from the clutches of other human beings and into a virtual world of disembodied chatbots. The one thing a chatbot will never have, or hopefully not anytime soon, is a mother that cooked a certain dish for them. And this is the stuff that's going to become like the most important part of our world. I know when I used to, I still train tour guides, but I used to be a tour guide and a food tour guide. And I had a big wake up call one day when I realized my guests were bored because I was like giving 30 minutes of context and history, and all they wanted to do was eat. And I realized actually just feed them first. And I also learned the power of an opening question to get people to kind of open up. And I sort of settled on over the years the question, what is a food memory from your childhood that you still remember today? Is a memory or a food or whatever? And you had said before about different cultures. I'd have somebody from Pakistan and South Africa and Peru and New Zealand, and couldn't be more different. And yet for that moment, we were all like groaning. We're like, oh yeah, maybe I know that dish, or I know what it was like to hate grandma's stew or to love grandma's whatever. Like we were united in like something really core about who we are as humans.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, when you're saying this, I'm just even, I don't know, in my head, I'm imagining being in the group when I was guiding too, and like when I would ask similar questions, and you just have that feeling of like shared nostalgia, even if they're talking about this Pakistani dish that you've never heard of and you've never tasted, but like you can just kind of imagine it because you think of your own grandma or your own mom and like a similar situation, and that feeling. And I mean, I know nothing about this, but I would dare to say there's got to be like hormonal stuff happening and like pheromone spraying. Like, I don't know, there's stuff happening, right, biologically that connects us to people that it would be very difficult to do in a different type of experience, or experience where you're just not with this group of people in this way for these couple of hours. And so for me, that's where the magic happens. And kind of going back to the whole starting point of like almost scale, I do believe that is scalable, but it is not easy. And it's interesting, the idea of any platform that is more based on the idea of like taking like a local host and consumer and putting them together. There's always a risk that a lot of what we're talking about won't actually happen on that tour. Maybe some of them it will naturally and magically, and those will be great. But then a lot of them without that box to understand this is an experience. This is a product, right? And so it's like, I think that's what I struggle with sometimes. This is a product and it has to have certain things about it. But at the same time, you want it to have enough space for those meaningful moments, for those differences, and for the kind of chemistry that might happen with one group over another.
Yeah, how do you know what to advertise, what to hold back, what to reveal? This is the meat of the question, because so many people in our community are that solopreneur. They have a small team, and it's like maybe it's just them guiding, or they have a team of 5 and they really know them and they know they're brilliant, but also it hampers growth. And so it's a big question, a big difficulty to figure out how much you're willing to lose of that kind of essence in order to grow when you've lost too much, and how do you carry that spirit forward?
Yeah, I think those are the important questions to ask oneself when even hiring your first tour guide. Like, how much autonomy do they have? In which places is it valuable? And in which places do I have to be more prescriptive with what, this is all about? And I don't think there's a one size fits all. And I think that's what makes experiences different and unique, one operator to another. But without that, you really run the risk of just having, every time someone takes one of your tours, a completely different experience.
In those sort of cities, once you started to feel like you got your groove, what were some of the techniques and ways and strategies that you made sure you were doing guide training well and systematizing some of that stuff?
I mean, I think it all starts with having, again, those staff members in each destination, because when they understand and are the ambassadors of the brand and of the kind of scaffolding in that destination, like that alignment is the first step to making sure that all of the guides have that. And so then just making sure that we do invest in our guides, and we always have and still do, I would say, comparatively, from what I know of a lot of similar companies or competitors in our regions, we get a lot of feedback that we invest quite heavily in just training, upfront training, the kind of process they'll go through to first lead a tour, but then ongoing education. And we have things like a lot of our destinations have a little library at the office that they have of books about food, culture, history that people can come and check out. It's a small thing, but I think the culture element of all of this is really important. And it's also, as I said before, really challenging because we're trying to create like a company culture with mostly freelance tour guides in very different cultures in different countries. That's super tricky. But if we have that person who's in the destination kind of interpreting and doing their job well, it somehow comes across. And so, yeah, we find our most engaged guides are definitely in cities where we have more guide engagement activities going on, whether that's, a wine tasting or a day to learn everything you might want to ever know about some strange food or something like that. We do a lot of different things. So yeah. And then, I think constantly just having a pool of new people coming in because, again, if you're a smaller operator, this might not be the case, but we find that tour guiding, especially food tour guiding, can be often a side gig, something that people are doing for a few years. And so there's like this natural kind of churn in the team. And of course, as you grow, you also need new people. So to be putting ourselves out there and sharing, we try to share, at least sometimes on social media or on LinkedIn or whatever, like moments of also behind the scenes and what our guides are doing and how they might be preparing for a tour, because we're hoping that people watch that and think like, oh, maybe I could do that. I'm interested. And we've had a lot of people come in the door who've never guided before, who, are almost, intimidated to go in front of a group and be like, wow, I'm going to lead a group for 4 hours and talk to them. Like, this is weird. But they go through the training and they understand the hosting element. And if they're a natural host, it's just a good fit. So it's really nice to empower those people.
I mean, yeah, it's great to sort of as an advertisement for new guides, but it's also empowering for the current guides to see themselves visible on that company page, on a team page, on your social media. It's harder to leave a company when they're like in love with promoting you and showing you off. It feels good.
Yeah, it does. And at the end of the day, we do a lot of work. We have a lot of staff, but like the guides are the face of the company. Like there's no arguing that they are the most important piece. They're the ones who are going to represent us every day, every night, every tour. And they're amazing. Like you've been a guide, I've been a guide. Like it's a hard job and but it's a fun job. It's a rewarding job. And it's just it's such an opportunity also to be with other people.
And, you and I as guides know that building that loyalty between us as freelancers, you were the owner of the company, but let's pretend we were freelancers and the company, that loyalty doesn't just happen through a single thing. There's not a speech you give or a line in your handbook or whatever. It's building that culture that you've been describing through all of these little small gestures and ways of encouraging them to feel part of something.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's not a quick thing. It's a slower burn, but if it's well done and you kind of hit that tipping point, like you said, like people stay, people are just engaged and they give great tours and, you feel very proud to say, okay, that was, you read some of the reviews and you're just like, wow, like so-and-so did their best and the people on their group were so affected by that. And that's the end of the day what we want to do. We want to kind of touch people when they're on their travels and open their minds and allow their curiosity to wander and be in a safe space for 4 hours and to learn a lot about a culture through its food. And I think that, again, 9.8 times out of 10, let's say, we do that. And that's really gratifying.
You load up TikTok and 80% of it is people in hats eating sandwiches and trying foods in places all around the world. In some ways, there's a DIY version of food tourism that is exploding without a guide. And it is food tourism because a lot of times people are booking and choosing either a key restaurant reservation or making wish lists of all these amazing things that they want to eat. How is that affecting the way you're thinking about what Devour's doing? And is it affecting your strategy as a company?
Well, I'd say social is more important than ever for us. So it's definitely a channel that we're investing in when it comes to marketing, more so than we were ever in the past. And it can be, I think people want to see a lot of the like very attractive foods and the kind of more tactile things on those platforms. And so, of course, we have those things on our tours. So our challenge is to bring those to the forefront, as well as a content creator may do in their own travels, and really show them that, okay, you are going to get that. You'll check that box. Kind of the same thing as before. We're hooking them in this time instead of with just the copy of you're going to try this delicious thing and that delicious thing, the video or the reel or whatever it might be. How it's affecting us, I would say there are a few things. Well, places go viral from a TikTok, and if they happen to be a place that we use or next to a place that we use as a vendor, it can be problematic. We've definitely seen our city centers in the past, even just let's say post-COVID years, lines are forming around places that before would have, gladly said, come work with us. Like we want people to come in. So in one way, it's a good thing, like they're thriving, but there's also like a bit of a sheep mentality when it comes to these things. You see a sandwich and you're like, well, must eat that sandwich. And they go to that place and maybe that place is great. Maybe it has a story. Maybe it doesn't. I've definitely seen a lot of instances where it's like, how did that place become TikTok famous? And I don't know, apparently the food was aesthetically pleasing. So yeah, I mean, I think overall it's just a product of the age we're living in and the way that we all interact with social. But there's definitely a risk of, if you travel that way, missing out on a lot of things. And I think that's where, even if you maybe follow TikTok for a few recommendations and try the famous this or the famous that, a guided tour, whether a food tour or a walking tour, I mean, a good one is going to add so much more depth. I feel like that they're missing the depth. That's what it is. Like they can go there, and even if the food's great and they can read the sign, maybe it is a historic place, and they can see the guy who was in the TikTok video, and they know that that's Jose, and they kind of know his story, and maybe they even interact a little bit and say something. But it's still so surface level compared to what you can have with a guided tour, or just like more of I hate to say like Anthony Bourdain style experience, like just a little bit more of a slower, open, curiosity led instead of checkbox led approach.
Does this evolution amount to a change in the way you're marketing Devour? I don't mean which channel, but how you're positioning a food tour.
Well, I think something we're really conscious of right now is just like, what is the next? We serve mainly like people from the younger millennial age group up into the boomer age group. And we know that the next generation is quickly going to have more purchasing power. And it's like, what experiences are they going to want? Are our experiences as we've been hosting them, are they going to kind of check the boxes for what they're looking for? And so certainly that's something that I'm really, really interested in making sure that we keep a close eye on. And so we've been working with some interns that are younger and just kind of using them as small little case studies of their microculture. So that's one thing. And as far as like, I'm trying to think. So marketing, yes, like we show more TikTok style stuff in our marketing instead of having the traditional, like, I'm just using an example and it's not necessarily what we do, but like instead of having the traditional photography on your website, maybe you have more of the real style influencer testimonials, like that type of thing visually or tactically. Yes, there's definitely things. But when it comes to product is kind of where I'm more interested in that question. Will it change the product? And I don't know. I worry that it might, in kind of a sad way, because I love how this product kind of evolved over the years. But it might, in that people, if we see that the expectations are a little bit more led by aesthetics, I think there's already operators who you see who are using very aesthetically pleasing places with Instagrammable moments. But that if you know the food scene in a destination, you wouldn't name them as a provider, maybe that would align with at least what we look for at Devour. So there is that. It hasn't changed our product yet, but I mean, it's something to keep in mind.
You've been doing webinars on destinations, and I keep seeing them pop up, and it feels like a blast from the past. It feels like almost like, and maybe it's because we've all gone through this like sickness around Zoom. We're just like done with it, and I'm wondering how that's been going, because it's an interesting idea. Public general
Yeah,
destination
well, it's funny
webinars?
because, like, I don't know, when we thought of it, we were in San Sebastian with a couple of members of the marketing team for a TBEX conference, and we were just I don't know how we got on the topic, and we're like, "Well, let's try that." Because obviously we're not selling something through leads, like a traditional online course or even like
Mm.
I don't know, other products that people sell. So we knew that it wouldn't really be for lead generation. I think what we originally saw it as was almost like an extension of what both Walks and Devour did during COVID, which was offer tours from home or cooking classes from home. Like we did a lot of both brands separately because at the time we weren't together. We did a lot of those things and we found them. I mean, economically, they weren't anything, but like they were immensely gratifying for us to be able to reach people who were so far away. And I've always thought the mission of Devour and of Walks now, like it extends to beyond obviously our business is selling tours and we want people to come on our tours, but we realize that that person who came on the tour or who might come on the tour in the future for the other 300x days out of the year, they are not in one of our destinations and able to take our tour and engage with our products. Having those online things during COVID really was like a special way to be like, no matter where you are. And some people at that time were like, we're not going to travel again. So, I mean, it just felt like we were still giving them a real taste and an experience, even from afar. And so when we decided to do the webinars, it was thinking at first that we would be reaching mainly people who were already booked with us and who maybe wanted a little bit more of a connection pre-trip or even post-trip to re-engage with some of the places. And in reality, we realized that while we don't have, huge attendees, it's a lot of people who are in the trip planning phase. And so they've become very helpful for people. And they're really fun for us to be able to put together all of our knowledge and have on some of the people that we know in the destinations who work with us, often as affiliates or tour guides, come on as local experts and just spend an hour of their time sharing tips and answering questions. So yeah, it started as an experiment and it went well by all of our kind of metrics, and it's just really gratifying as well to be able to reach people who are kind of face to face, who are in the trip planning phase when normally you're not really engaging with them so directly. It's much more like, okay, your Instagram post might have reached them, but you don't have that kind of closer connection. So it's a really fun thing. I've hosted a few and it's fun.
Yeah, I really like the idea. I mean, it's kind of a classic thing in the multi-day world, but I don't see it as much in the day tour world. But in a world where you're trying to get your brand out and cut through the noise and get that sort of loyalty or recognition, well, you're just doing them an act of goodness. You know what I mean? You're not really doing any heavy selling. It's just like you're just doing an act of kindness and they're getting to see your face and likewise you see theirs. That's relationship building. And so if I'm a customer and then it comes time that I decide I'm going to Madrid, chances are I actually remember like seeing your face and thinking about, oh yeah, what was that company in Walks or Devour? I think that's a really actually shrewd retro thing.
I know. It is weird. Like whenever we say we do webinars, I'm always like, people think it's weird. But like again, it's gratifying. It's putting a face to the brand and it's that kind of slower burn. Yeah, because I mean multi-day makes sense. You get X number of people to your webinar and you're hoping that X% of them, go into the funnel and then some of them buy the tour. Obvious what happens. For us, it's not so
Programmatic,
much
yeah.
about that, but it's been, I won't say low lift. I'm sure my team would kill me if I said low lift, but it's been low-ish lift, let's say, and just kind of it was something that it just feels us. And in that kind of maybe our brand, both Walks and Devour, our brands are a bit like, we're curious, we like to educate, but we're also passionate, and so it's like it just feels like us. Like, hey, we have lots of things to share with you. Like, let us give you a webinar, and if you come, you'll like it. And so far, people have liked it. So
I love it. Before we wrap up, I did just want to give you a chance to list all your failures that you've always done. I think it's an important part though of a business. And I know you've been very upfront through your journey of kind of mistakes made. And I'm wondering what are some of the learnings that our food tour operator audience out there can learn from sort of you, who I think a lot of people look up to as somebody who made it through a really difficult path. And it's probably important that they don't think it's all roses and easy.
no, it's not roses, but yeah, I'm really honest about failure because I think it's just so powerful. I kind of love failure in a way. I know that might sound weird, but because it is what, what forms you and what teaches you and what you just that's how this business grew. It was very organic. I was young when I started it, didn't know anything, and so there was just, I mean, there's too many failures to even try to discuss. I would say right now, when I talk to food tour operators, a lot of them do ask the question about scale. Like they feel maybe a pressure to scale. And I would say, with kind of in hindsight, the first questions you have to ask, and these are the hard ones, are really for yourself. Like, what do you want? You know, it's like, it's your life and your business. And what if you imagined it in 5 years and there was success? Like, what would that look like to you? Because it is very individual. There's no one metric of success. And I think in this industry, especially as a smaller operator, which of course we were for a long time, much smaller, there's a tendency to compare yourself, right? And always like be looking over your shoulder. And I think keeping an eye on the competition and the other people in the space and even other like parallel verticals is great and essential. And it's something I do a lot of. But every time I tend to catch myself really comparing or thinking like they do this and we should do that. And like you just stop yourself and you're like, wait, what path are we on? So I know that that's a little bit broad, but like trying to constantly, and it doesn't have to be a path that you define for the next 5 years and never changes. It's like I like to think of it, quarterly, biannually, annually, just checking in with what's the path you're on. Are you going in the right direction to get there? Are the choices that you're making, are they reflecting that path or are they reflecting something else? Because another kind of easy thing to make a mistake with is to chase the money. It's easy to do. But I mean, at the beginning, we said yes to everything. Like no was not in our vocabulary. So we ended up hosting some really strange tours, really difficult to execute events, and very financially horrible things as well, where, I said, yes, that sounds like a lot of money they're going to give us. And then you realize that when you did it all, it's like, oh, wow, we lost a lot of money with that. So, I mean, I think it takes a lot of confidence to start saying no, but the sooner you can have those conversations with yourself and understand what you want, I think the easier that is to do. And that's, the ability to say no is powerful. It's really powerful. So a lot of our mistakes were around that. Also, I would say hiring over the years was always a challenge, especially at the beginning when we just didn't have best practices to follow. So for my co-founder and I, it was really valuable to work with a business coach. I know you guys at Tourpreneur have plenty of coaching services and you offer so much free advice as well to your members and in the groups you have. It's wonderful to be able to be part of a community, which at that time didn't really exist when we first started. So those of us who are working now and have these opportunities to be parts of these communities and engage in them, I would just say like that is a huge advantage. And a mistake we made was probably actually being too heads down for a long time. Because that's easy to do too. You're just like, we're doing it. And you kind of don't talk enough to other people who are doing the same thing. So I don't know. Those are some of them that come to mind.
Yeah, the say no thing is so important and so hard. Knowing what is your North Star, knowing what are you about and what should you be focused on so that you do know when to say no. But also, and I struggle with this, when to quit a project or when to, because entrepreneurship is a lot about like staying the course. Like we're going to make this work. When do you know to pull out of a city that you expanded to? And I know you've been in those situations where you've had to kind of almost reverse course.
Oh yeah. When we first kind of went bigger from Madrid, we thought we were just going to be Devour Spain. And the whole idea was like, we know Spain. That's what we specialize in. We're going to launch in all the cities in Spain. And we're also going to do other things like sell wine and do wine tastings in an underground cave, which we rented. And, all of these other verticals around food, gastronomy, Spanish, food culture. And so we tried a bunch of them. They were all failures. Yeah, with smaller destinations didn't work because we couldn't support the full-time salary that we had in our model. And we also found that the travelers to those smaller cities were different. They weren't our core demographic, and therefore they spent less time there, and they were interested in different things. So that experiment, was quickly, okay, those don't really work. Now we kind of get the cities that work for us. And then for the other types of activities, some of them maybe could have had some legs, but it was just like, wow, our energy is really being diverted and we're not focused. And I think once you go through the process of building something, and most of us try a lot of different things, but you see that like one or two of them have success and you see the power of focus, I think that is so amazing. Like once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. And so once you've seen what focus can do, you start to realize how risky it is to divert your energy into too many things. And I think some classic entrepreneurs, and I would consider myself to be like this, but I catch myself. I have to be really like diligent with myself. You want to do like 10 things. You have new ideas all the time. I just right now with ChatGPT, I just like put them in like these docs, I like make business plans, but then I forget about them. And I'm like, they're there. So if in like few years I for some reason want to pull one out, maybe I can, but like kind of get the creative energy out, but then I just like leave it. And I think, and I've read this in other people's work, but like one of the reasons that Devour is and has been quote unquote successful is because of the focus. Like we tried other things, sure, but we did let them go. And we focused and we kept on and we kept working. And some days were hard. Many days were hard. Many days didn't give you that kind of boost of energy or success. But like when the 10 plus years goes by, you're still there. And I think a lot of that is just being diligent and not overextending yourself.
Well, speaking of letting go, I should let you go before I overextend my invitation to you. We're reaching the hour mark, and Lauren, thank you so much. This was really soulful, but also practical. What a hard mix, but I knew you'd be able to achieve it. Thank you for joining us on Tourpreneur.
Thank you for having me.